They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking,
hi, this is Nico. You're listening to my dad or fall, also known as the White Rabbit and James Gardine on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Buckle up and enjoy.
deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
All right, coffee in hand. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to another edition of that Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Hey guys, I'm recording live from my studio, my house, and this is, I think, Joe's the first ever guest to join me in person.
And I am quite honored. Quite honored.
So we're figuring this audio video thing out. It should sound pretty good. But I thought for $5.89, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and learn some lessons along the way. And who better to have than my friend and long time ago boss,
Yes,
Joe Dibiase. Welcome, Joe.
Well, thank you, Raf. Glad to be here. I heard the podcast with James Beeson.
Okay.
And I texted you like, I was in the car and I pulled over. I said, if Beeson's on, you got to have me on.
Well, it took me a minute to get Beeson on, but he was a very popular guy, obviously. We worked together, all of us, in the same giant meatball. So tell people a little bit about yourself. How we got to get.
Yeah, so I've been, like, I've been around the security world since a long time. I started doing security work in 1991.
Oh boy.
Yes. And I can give you the history if you want to understand, if you want that, how I got into that. But I started with in security with AT&T.
Okay.
And worked there for a while. And then got recruited at GE by Marisa Baffardi.
I remember Marisa.
Yeah, Marisa. Yeah, she was at AT&T with me. She went to GE and gave me a call. And then I ended up at GE.
One of these days, I got to track Marisa down and get her on the podcast.
Yes.
Her and Carolyn would be good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have not talked to them in a long time.
It's been a minute.
Yes. So, and I was at GE for, 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
And then got a job over at First Data. Doing, VP of security over there.
So you boomeranged.
I did. And financial services, which is a whole different world.
Yeah, it moves faster, doesn't it?
Yes. And I worked with Susan Malden over there.
Okay.
So, and she was, Susan was a great CEO, a great CISO.
Yeah.
She happened to be at Equifax at the time.
Okay.
So she had that was kind of, I want to say, unfortunate for her.
Yeah. Well, that situation sucked all around. But So you and I met at GEPS. GE Power became G Energy, became, right. I don't know what it is. I don't know whatever it is today.
Yes. But they're on their own company now.
We did some things. We had globally distributed monitoring networks.
Mm-hmm.
We had, and I came to you guys. I don't know if you remember this, but I came to you guys. Brooke Carroll was still there.
Yes,
your predecessor.
Yes,
and
you were a contractor.
I was a contractor. I was installing. Hey, Rob Graham, if you're listening, network ice, black ice that blew up GE's network. And then I came to fix that, and Mark decided that you guys wanted me on board, and so I joined the team as a contractor. And the rest, as they say, is history. We were joking because we went out to lunch, guys, and we were just kind of talking about what do we want to talk about, and there were so many lessons learned, so much of a progression of how security really grew up. We were truly information security back then, right? We had ties into the network. We had a snort sensor out there. I remember we had Exchange, WA, a front end to Exchange, and then we monitored and managed. I'd say we monitored patch management, but wasn't really something that was well done. And then we did antivirus.
Yep. We're also doing application risk assessments on an application by application level. So, yeah,
I broke a lot of apps. That's how I got started in AppSec because it was so easy. Everything. I think the problem, and some of the companies still face this, right? We did the way we did applications was obviously lowest cost bidder, like every global, offshore, nearshore kind of work. But then you'd have a code base, and somebody say we need an update, we need X module added. They'd bid it. It'd go to some company. They would develop it, test it, send it back to us for UAT. We'd sign off on it. They'd wash their hands of it, and then security would
come in and say, wait.
We'd get it Friday morning. Like, oh, by the way, well, after we finally got in, right? So we got into that process. We'd get it like Friday morning, and they're like, oh, it's going live on Sunday night. Just double check this, that's okay.
Yeah.
It was
never.
There's a lot of politics.
Yes. And it's interesting, some of the things that we did and some of the things that we broke, and
we broke a lot.
I'll never forget, because we would starting to do when we were doing network scans. It was something that was new. So we said we're going to start doing network scans, and we would contact the business. GE was multiple different businesses, and say, how many places we can't scan, because let us know. No,
I know where you're going with this.
We're fine.
And then you'd scan it, and suddenly
I'll never forget, I was sitting in my office one time. You guys went out to lunch. I was sitting in my office, and you came back, and I literally went like this as you guys walked by, and I said, wind's down.
Yeah, we broke wind.
We broke wind. We broke all the wind farms. Yes. So, but we asked them, and they said you could scan it. And so I remember calling, because I had to go tell somebody, what happened. This is what happened. We asked them. We had the process. They told us we did it. We won't do it again, but now we got some issues.
That was like one little NERC issue we had where I was, remember, we were scanning NT4 machines.
Yeah.
That's when Microsoft said, no more. We're not even letting you do extended support. So again, did the same thing, right? We had a flat network, which was scary in itself, but luckily they rectified that.
You think about, yes, but that was like in the 2000.
I think that was 2002. Yeah,
that's 20 years ago.
22 years ago. Don't remind me. That is as utterly terrifying. They're like, that was yesterday. What are you talking about, Joe?
It does seem like
it does. But we got the blocks of IP addresses. Like, hey, we called the site manager, which was not a security guy, barely an IT guy, and we're like, all right, is there anything out here we can't avoid? Nope, everything's fine. Great. Launched the Nmap scan with all the flags set, went to lunch, came back, and your office was buzzing. I remember hearing loud noises coming from there, and you're like, and I'm looking. I remember sitting on my computer, and the little bubble would come in the bottom right-hand corner and say, "Hey, your network's disconnected." I'm like, "What?" I look at somebody's unplugged me. At which point you're like, "You here." Yeah, we broke a VMS VAX box or pair, a cluster that was attached to a rather interesting power generation facility that couldn't operate at the time because we broke the monitoring hardware and software. Oh, I just kept picturing like Chernobyl in my head. I'm like, oh my God, well, I'm gonna have my name on a report somewhere as the guy that ended the West Coast. Luckily, none of that happened. But that was.
But it's interesting because it brought up. I learned a lot, and it brought up the interesting part of the business and the network and security. So, for example, I remember we scanned everything. Yeah. We had nuclear.
Yeah.
Right. So we had a facility in Wilmington, North Carolina that made nuclear fuel.
Yeah.
And I could ping the machine that made nuclear fuel from my desk.
Yeah.
And it was like, that probably wasn't a good idea to begin with. All right. But now we know.
Yeah.
But I do remember we would scan them.
Yeah.
And it was okay. And they'd come back with vulnerability. Yeah. And we would call them and they said, well, we can't.
Yeah.
And I remember it literally took me a trip there to talk to the guy and understand what was going on. He goes, look, Joe, for us to get this system working to make nuclear fuel, we have to get it certified.
Yeah.
And it takes a couple of months.
Yeah.
If we change any bit of software on that machine, we got to get it certified again.
Yeah.
So if we rolled out a patch, they have to get it recertified. So we had this conflict of the government regulations, the business, and security.
Yeah.
So The way we solved that was with a firewall to totally isolate them, which was a good thing anyway.
Yeah.
But you had to come. You got these conflicts of things you got to figure out.
I feel like we were the lessons I learned, I've carried from that company. I've carried everywhere and in the consulting world. And I say that because we survived NIMDA, Code Red, SQL Slammer, Sasser Worm, which took down Evendale, where they made jet turbines.
Yeah.
It was like scrap metal, scrap metal. And that's when we realized that, hey, we found one facility that was still on hubs and not switches.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't shut ports down. We had a good process for that, by the way. And we learned the hardest lessons on the largest possible network, the most diverse network. And I'm grateful for that, because as little as we slept back then,
yes,
and as hard as that job was, I feel like we learned those lessons that you want, like how to really manage a network that you don't fully have control over. I mean, we had energy services going out to China, to all over the world. We were monitoring all sorts of things out of Atlanta here. And, we found out that we could actually break a checkpoint firewall.
Mm-hmm.
You could have enough rules to break a checkpoint firewall. Did it? We integrated technology as we started buying. Do you remember that project that we had, it was right before I left, that project that we had to integrate? We bought some company and we had the IBM Theon firewalls. Do you remember that?
I do not.
I still have nightmares about that thing. You log in and I was on all these calls. Eric took over for me. I think I apologized to him multiple times for that. But it was like,
yes, I don't remember the name. Now I remember. Yes,
right. It was a Kansas City, some company in Kansas City that we bought. Anyway, it was like, here's 500 rules in a firewall that nobody's heard of in 20 years. By the way, moved us over to Checkpoint, and you've got 3 months. Yes. Like, what?
Exactly.
Not a thing. How are you going to do this? But we learned scale. We learned to do as much as you can with as little as you could. As we didn't have the big governance. You couldn't show up in somebody's office you're going to do this or else. And people are like, Joe, we're not going to do it. Okay, we talk about something else.
Well, the other thing we learned is not only scale at the time, the businesses were so diverse. Creativity. We had to be creative. We were.
That's true.
We had to be creative, and like we talked about, the network team doesn't necessarily like the security team.
Yeah.
But we had to work. We had to figure out how to work together to make things work.
Well, I remember I ended up in Kevin's office at one point. I think this was
Kevin Hoffman. How you doing out there?
Yeah, Kevin's out there somewhere. I don't know if he's going to remember the conversation, but I ended up in his office at some point. We had an app that effectively, you could drive a semi through sideways, right? And I was like, guys can't. I wasn't not approving the firewall rule to get to open the app. As we ended up in his office, and I'll never forget the life lesson that I learned from Kevin, which was he said, and I paraphrase, but pretty close. He said, if you guys disappear tomorrow, we can still transact, even if we have to go back to pen and paper, and some of the stuff can still work. Because if we disappear tomorrow, all of us are out of work. And I was like, that's a fair point. Right. So I came in wide-eyed engineer, from a pen testing breaking background, I can break it, therefore you must fix it. And I learned very quickly that's not how the world works.
It's risk, and it's basically managing risk.
Yeah. And we managed a lot of it.
We sure did.
So I left. I went over to consumer. You were there for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
What you did after that?
Yeah. So I got to work as CISO of both power and aviation, aircraft engines, and throwing rail in there for a little bit.
Just for fun.
Yeah, for a while. And after that, like I said, then I got out and went over to First Data because I wanted to get into the financial.
Okay.
I don't know why. I wish, you look back and go, because I had done we had worked on telecommunications, I did manufacturing, did nuclear. I had not had the financial or healthcare.
Yeah.
I said, finance would be fun.
Yeah.
And
Finance. So now finance seems like it's the place to be because it's all super cutting edge. It's all fast moving. It's all the latest tech, but it's hard.
It's very hard. It's very stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really stressful. It is the place to be because it's where money is.
Yeah.
So
and something interesting. I think that you're from your management style. You were really good at solving these you can't make me do it complex problems. And you mentioned the network team, and that's still a problem, you guys. You're probably sitting out there going, yeah, that's a thing. The security team wants to put in controls. We want to put in hardware, software. We want to put in checkpoints. We want to put in all kinds of processes and stuff. The network team still doesn't like us because that's bumps in the wire, right, in one form or fashion. The apps teams don't want us because it's bumps in the wire in some form or fashion. It's slowing down process. And so now I think the things that we took from the job we worked together was how to be that minimally invasive was the way to go. And if you made it too hard, people would simply stop calling you and do their thing anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And did that follow you into the finance world as well? I imagine it did.
Yes and no, because under the finance world, because there were so many regulations you had.
Oh, that's true.
The compliance efforts drove everything in the finance world.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had the FFIEC, and they're doing huge audits, and I mean, and we were also doing PCI, right? Because we were data was processed credit cards.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I mean, the compliance. I mean, the team was just so big. It was huge. I mean, 200 and something people, 300 people.
That's a lot of people.
A lot of people doing security. So yeah,
that's a lot of people to do that job. Have you found? I mean, now it's been 22 years, right?
Yes.
Have you found that? I don't want to say things have gotten better because they haven't. And I titled this episode kind of purposely, right? More things change. So I feel like some of the things that we did, and if you take the name and the product off of that particular control, this is just recycling old ideas at this point.
Yeah.
We've recycled a lot of ideas. And look, I remember 2001. We created the first. We were really starting to get on the cutting edge of putting applications through security testing, dynamic security testing. And I remember thinking, man, how is this business so far behind? And 20 years later, there are companies that are still not great at it. And so it's kind of interesting to realize how far ahead we were and some of the things that we did that was just exciting. We thought we were doing well.
I mean, I think a lot of it is recycled.
Yeah.
New technology makes it very easy for old things to put it back in again.
Yeah. We did. So everything was NIDS, it was antivirus, and it was proxies, forwarding proxies. That's how we kept everybody safe-ish, right? And investigations. You investigate the rest.
Yeah.
And I feel like their name is different, but SASE, SSE, whatever, Secure Edge, kind of a similar concept. Yeah. We've segmented things. Well, we hope,
yeah.
sort of. And I think the regulations have driven a lot. Like we talked, Jeremiah Grossman's podcast was just released last week, and so we were talking about liability. Can we hold companies liable for software bugs that they have in their code? Who's going to do that? Is the insurance industry going to do that? And we didn't have insurance back then, but it was risk-based, so it's still money in it. It's not really that different.
Yeah, a lot of it's the same. It's interesting you talk about should you hold a company responsible?
Yeah.
I mean, if my Tesla just decides, which I don't have a Tesla, but I press on the brakes and there's a software problem and the car doesn't stop.
Yeah,
they'll have to do something, right?
Right.
Yeah, so.
But you sign, like every one of us, buys a piece of software. You sign that, you click through that end user license agreement. It basically absolves the manufacturer from any risk whatsoever. And you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel. But it didn't feel right back then.
No.
It still doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what have you been doing the last couple of years, Joe? Because I know you've gone off and you've decided you're going to consult.
So my last gig was working for a carpet company.
Okay.
Interface here in Atlanta. Very good job. It's much smaller.
A little less stressful.
Ton less stressful. Ton less stressful. We still had some stress, but a ton less stressful, which was good. And they got a new CIO, and about a year after, and all of his direct reports started to get, fired.
Oh.
I was kind of like the last one out. I think the only reason I was the last one out is because I was old. And they can't just get rid of old people because we're quite a protected class. But I finally got going March. It was March 1st. I'll never forget this. I knew I was going to get laid off. I could see it from the previous October.
Okay.
And in fact, I called my old boss, who was the previous CIO, and I said, Sanjay, I think I'm going to get laid off soon. He goes, yeah, it's very possible. I said, I'm going to stay here. He said, yeah, definitely stay because they're going to give you a package. You don't want to leave together. So I'll never forget because I'm in the office and working. All of a sudden, bingo, here comes a meeting for 1:00 with my boss that says, catch up.
Yeah.
And I literally called my wife and said, I think I'm going to get laid off today. She said, okay. So I spent the rest of the time going through my laptop, and deleting anything that was on there that might have been personal.
Yeah.
Right. And doing that. So when I went into the meeting and there was HR there,
you're like, here you go.
Yeah, exactly. They say, I already cleaned it up. So and that was like, I tell people that's the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, at this point in my life, of where I am.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I started to consult.
Yeah.
Because I back in October when I thought I was getting laid off, my wife said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'll consult." I mean, people, I am, like I said, where I am in my life. I only needed a couple of years till I can start thinking about retirement.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother thing I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So I started a company, Dibiase Consulting, if anybody cares. And I've been doing that. I think I started that company, I think in like April. I think I got my first gig in like June. And I've been working solid ever since.
Okay.
But I also always wanted to, I'm a big baseball fan.
Yeah.
So I
you got to show that. You got to show that off.
So I always wanted to work for the Atlanta Braves. And I was talking to my financial advisor, and he was like, "Well, Joe, just go ahead." So I got laid off on Monday the 1st. On Monday the 8th, I applied for a job at the Braves.
Oh, okay.
On the 9th, I got an email saying, "Do you have time for a Zoom interview?" I said, yes. On the 10th, I had a Zoom interview. Midway through the call, I had the job.
Nice.
So I'm an usher at the Braves during baseball.
Hey, listen, and it happened to be a good season.
Yes, it was great. And I have a great section. I'm lower level, so I'm right past the visitors' dugout. And I got to stand. We stand, the usher stand. There's 13 rows between where I stand and the field. So I'm in row 14.
Nice.
I get to watch the World Series from row 14. It's great.
You got to show that.
So everybody cares. I got the Braves gave us a.
Look at that.
A ring. Okay, see that?
Look at that.
It looks like there you go. Look like that. It's got my name on it and everything. There.
That is awesome. Joe.
It is awesome. It was cool. They gave everybody a ring. And the weird part is, this is all through 2022 and all through 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, all the ushers wear the rings.
Yeah. While
we're there, and almost every game, somebody says, "Can I see your ring?" Nice. Almost every game, and that's 3 years ago. I mean, little kids, you tell them to put it on, and mom grabs a picture. It's really cool. It's really cool.
So how's look, you worked in one of the largest global companies on the planet, right? Yeah. Arguably one of the most diverse.
Yeah.
At the same time, technology forward, but also laggard. Like certain parts of the company were technology forward, certain parts were desperately holding on to the past. You navigated that. What are some of the things, like how do you put that into practice when you go consult? Because you're a DCSO?
Well,
more or less.
Yes and no.
Okay.
The hard part for me is honestly keeping up with all the technology.
Yeah, that's
really the hard part for me.
That's not just you, Joe.
So, so I started VCSO.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to do. And I also decided the hard part of a business, not the hard part, a hard part of a business is selling.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there doing what I do.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do I sell? So what I decided to do, Raph, was, and it kind of fell in my lap, okay? Because I had no idea what to do. All right. I had never had a business before.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if you know Donna Gallagher. Do you know Donna? So Donna's a VC so here in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I met her at a couple conferences, right? And she knew me from Adam. I think maybe just my name.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So I remember talking to Donna. I don't know what to do. She said, let's get on a call. So she got on a call and helped me out. I had a lawyer, right? And got the business going.
Yeah.
And she make sure you get insurance, make sure you do this, all the things I needed to do. Okay. So I helped with that. And then I also contacted Wes Knight. I don't know if you know Wes.
I know Wes.
So
City of Atlanta, right? For a long time.
Yeah, he was doing one of the financials down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think wasn't he? Okay, yeah. That makes
So
sense.
I contacted Wes, and so saying, Wes, can you help me? I don't know. I'm just getting started. Just want to hear your experience. That's what I thought was a good thing.
Sure.
Sure, Joe. Doing a conference call. He goes, well, I'm not really contracting, Joe. I'm kind of retired, but I'm working for this company called Needling Worldwide, and we do CMMC assessments and stuff like that. Okay. I said, Wes, you ever could you use somebody like me? He goes, yeah, let me talk. So I started, and he says, why don't you come on to give me work on some CMMC assessments? He said, sit here with me. After that, now I do CMMC pre-assessments.
Okay.
So we sit down and with a company called Needling.
Yeah.
It's one of the companies that are good. I mean, all the companies I've worked for, I have good things to say. So we do that, and what we do is pre-assessments. So the company comes in, and we go through all the checklists, tell them you're good here, you're not good here.
Yeah.
It's easier for me because it's just basically kind of doing all the controls.
Yeah.
I can catch up on the technology, and I'm not doing this. I'm not being the VC side.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
A little bit less risk.
A little bit less risk. And so I heard you guys talk about CMMC a couple of times on your team. It's very interesting. A lot of the companies I work for that we do are very small companies.
That's the challenge with CMMC is it applies to I feel like the place that it applies the most is who's going to hurt the most. They have to put all these massive controls in place.
I've actually been on calls with people who are like, we have to do this. I'm like, yeah, you got to do this. It's like the cost of doing this.
Yeah.
May not be worth
the business.
Because they said we got one, maybe two contracts a year. These people make, I don't know, plastic parts, or these are all companies that do something. They make a part.
So this is sort of like FedRAMP, right? Where it's a really expensive ticket to a dance. There may not actually be any partner to dance with.
Yep. In fact, I'm working with a company right now where they're working on. So I'm doing a lot. If you haven't figured this out, I'm doing a lot of compliance-based work, which is fine with me. I got a company through SOC 2, which is fine. Well, we got a company right now I'm working on that is going for TexRamp. You know what TexRamp is?
No.
Oh, okay. So
is it? Is Texas something?
Yes, it is. So there's FedRamp. You know what FedRamp is? You know what StateRamp?
Yeah.
Okay. So StateRamp is basically FedRamp modified.
Yeah.
Right? And you get certified there, and a bunch of states may or may not take.
Sure.
Right. Texas will take StateRamp.
Okay.
But Texas has their own ramp.
Well, of course they do.
And guess what they based it on? FedRamp. So it's basically FedRamp.
Okay.
Minus a little bit of things. So, which is interesting when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? So it applies to any, if you have a contract with a government organization, and this will also apply to if you're doing something for a state school.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, so the company I'm working for has a customer in Texas that's associated with the Texas government. Therefore, they need to do it. TexRamp.
Okay.
So we're taking them through TexRamp.
So how much of the things that we pull from that big company, how much of that applies?
Almost.
That's what I was thinking, right?
It's all the same. It's all the same stuff. I mean, like I said, the hard part for me is keeping up with the technology.
And again, not just you.
No, and I ask, I'll go through it. I'll see I'll literally go through and say, okay, this is the control. How do you meet the control? We use this. I got to go now and do research on, what does this mean at AWS? What does this mean at Azure? So, what's this tool you bought? So,
and there's more of them every day, which doesn't make it any easier, which is just another problem. So,
but let me just back up. So, my very first job consulting, I contacted my old boss, Sanjay, and I told him, hey, I literally called him on the way home from Sanjay. I got laid off. Okay, I said, if you ever need me, let me know. So, literally a couple of weeks later, he calls, Jay, you want to come work for us for a little bit? I said, yeah. I also said, hey, by the way, Sanjay, I just got this job working for the Braves, so I may have to work around it. He says, okay, we'll put you hourly. If you work around, I'm fine. I worked around it. So I didn't get 40 necessarily get 40 hours every week, which was fine. Nobody cared. And he brought me in through. He goes, I'm going to just bring you in through Miracle. So basically, it was subcontracting. And that's what got me thinking. Also subcontracting. It's like, okay, I mean, I'll just contract. I'll just subcontract. And that's what I ended up doing. And I've been working with this company. I've been working with Needling. Another company called IO Merchant. Out of DC. It's two guys.
It's always
a small company.
Small companies,
And John and Brett, and I think John Rose. And
thanks, John, for always killing me. I'm not going to bring that up.
And John was very good. I was on a VCSO Catalyst meeting. I don't know who the VCSO Catalyst is. It's a group. A bunch of VCSOs. And John was giving a talk. Same thing. He gave his talk. I pinged him after the talk on LinkedIn. John, I really like your presentation. I may or may not like this presentation, but it was an interesting presentation. But it was really just the intro. You ever lose subcontractors like me? I'm just getting started. Let's talk, Joe. And I worked for him for a while. So
this is an industry. I think more and more the folks that have the battle scars from back in the day. We were all shouting, "Get off my lawn!" at the young kids. Those kids have grown up. We've gotten into, we'll say, advanced stages of our careers, and I don't know about you, but I'm recognizing that the things that we struggled with, the hard problems that we struggled with, have sort of been lightly plastered over for the last 20 or so years. And now the plasters are coming off, and you're like, wait, nobody solved those things. And so asset discovery and management, identity, network segmentation, network analysis, right? Like, holy crap. Those things are back.
Yes, they are.
Vulnerability management. All of those things are coming back, and nobody's doing them right. And nobody's doing them well. I said right is not the word. Nobody's doing them sufficiently well to protect themselves, because if they were, we would not see breach after breach after. Like, my mailbox, fills up with the latest breach du jour all day long, as I'm sure yours does, and you lose track of them. It's been an interesting ride. What do you think is the I don't know, the weirdest thing that's, maybe weird is not the right word, the most challenging thing that you've worked on that hasn't gotten solved yet? Put you on the spot a little bit.
Yes. Well, the one thing that I see is in companies that have customers, and it goes down to identity management, especially when your customers are other businesses. Right? So, for example, you have a platform that another business has 20 people logging into. You can't manage any of those identities unless. So it's a people process problem more than a technology problem. How do you know when those people are gone unless the other company tells you? And if they don't, then that is, if you leave,
yeah,
and you go work somewhere else, and they don't tell me, you still have access to all their stuff in our system.
yeah. There's a fine line. I think this is endemic to security, because every company has customers of some kind, and those that provide technology to others, it makes it worse, right? So it amplifies the problem. But I've seen this in two different ways. One is the third-party risk problem, which you and I struggled with mightily.
Yep.
And I'm going to say today's companies struggle with mightily because it's breach after breach of like, well, technically it's my data, but it's that company over there that's my partner that suffered a breach. It was just my data lost. Customers was like, I don't care. You had the data, you lost. It was lost on your watch, and like, who are you sharing with? Shouldn't you? But the third-party risk problem we had 20 some odd years ago was difficult because, the scale we and I worked at is most companies never see that scale, like in the millions, right? But the relationships were less complex. Now they're more complex. There's more collection of data.
Mm-hmm.
There's much more ample opportunity to misuse it, even accidentally.
Yeah.
And that is not an excuse.
No.
And so it's like this third-party risk problem is a real thing. It's not going away.
No.
How do we solve it, Joe?
Find me that, Raph, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I have my own podcast.
I'd be interviewing you on your private island.
Exactly.
All right, so a couple minutes left. Pull out that old crystal ball. 5 years and 10 years in the future, Joe. What's this industry look like? Because you've had a pretty good arc.
Yeah.
Right? Where's it going?
It's interesting because I see some of the, just in general, as I see some of the legislation coming out, and the possibility of CISOs getting
to jail.
Yes, I think it's going to be a very interesting thing because that to me is something that I would be. I don't know how to answer your question, but I'd be very concerned about being a CISO.
Well, that impacts the future of the CISO world.
It does. I mean, because it's the CISO can only do so. I think back to Equifax.
Yeah.
The CISO can only do so much, right? You can get reports, you can tell people to patch, you can do stuff like this and this. A system doesn't get patched, it gets breached.
Yeah.
You're responsible.
Yeah.
You had a report, you reported it, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of brings, what, and should the CISO then get, be legally responsible for that?
But I'm going to, I hear the challenge, but I'm going to challenge that by saying the legal counsel is ultimately, let's say the head of HR.
Right.
The head of HR can't enforce and can't force people to behave well, but if something bad happens on their watch, God forbid, something untoward.
Right.
Ultimately, it rolls up to them.
Yeah.
Same with legal. Same. The CEO owns the risk ultimately for the company. I get it. CISOs aren't in a position often of being the enforcement arm, so that you can't do the thou shalt.
Right.
But I think it's what has been asked for in the last 20 years is we want the accountability. We want the ability to go force people to do things.
So I have no problem, right? And maybe it's just me personally being the guy that's accountable and responsible, and I might get fired for this. So, I mean, because that's the job you take on.
Yeah.
But as soon as they come back and say, well, you might go to jail for that.
Yeah, it's different.
That changes everything. And now that's different.
Yeah, that's certainly that's something to think about because I kind of wonder what that's going to do to the CISO profession. Is it going to force those folks that have less of a business background and understanding of liability? You have to have your own lawyer. You have to have liability insurance. You have to understand what's material impact and all things. Like security people don't generally think that way. We haven't.
Yeah.
The good ones do, right? You guys do. But
we
not everybody does.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to do one of two things. And maybe I'm wrong. I think it's going to do one of two things. It'll either level up the game or it'll add some shallowness to the pool because people will simply leave. They'll stop being CISO and they'll go be VCISOs.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think there's another option there. I think it's path A or path B. I hope it's, if I'm honest, I hope it's a little bit of both. Because we have some really great CISOs, some good CISOs that could be really great. And there are really great CISOs out there. I've had a bunch of them on the podcast. You, James, several that have been on the show. So that understand the business, understand the various aspects of technology and how it interacts. And they can teach and mentor, taking those that are good, making them great.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's those folks that really, we don't need to call anybody out because everybody learns at their own pace. But there's a lot of people that got in the giant vacuum sucking sound when all these new regulations were introduced, where CISOs had to be in place. A lot of people got elevated to CISO that had no business being there.
Yep.
And I think those guys are in trouble.
Yep, I think so too. And it's interesting because like guys like me and you, I think when I came out of being a security guy, right? A good security guy had experience in a lot of different places. Like I started my life as a developer.
Yeah.
So I was a developer, right? And of course you knew networks and
how to move packets.
Yeah. So you learn all parts of the business. And then you moved into security. Now you had this because you worked at the lower levels at these different places. You had
how it all fits.
You understood. So that was important for me. A lot of people don't. I mean, that was interesting when we would talk to developers, because a lot of the developers had no idea, especially the ones who were outsourced it, had no idea how the network worked.
Yeah.
And it was like, come on, guys, you got to understand how stuff works together to do stuff right. So we're going to build a solution.
Yeah.
But I think a good security person understands all of that, at least from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
The other side is the business side and making sure you have a good business. Like James was great. Hi, James, has great business acumen, right? So, I mean, a guy that does that, you got to be able to combine those two things, I think, to really be a good CISO.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And it takes experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So. Yeah, I think it takes going through some of the things that we went through, you guys went through, understanding. I mean, some of this industry is politics. Some of this is budgeting. Some of it is figuring out, hey, look, you've got 3 super critical things. One of them is getting solved. The other 2, you're going to hope and pray.
Yeah.
And picking the right one. And I know all too many vendors out there want to make it seem like, hey, my magic box solves all these things.
Nope,
they don't. It's just they don't. And technology is still has not solved this thing. So anyway, we could talk for a while, but I think that's good enough there.
It's real interesting. I was just something interesting on the compliance side of the world. Just one little story.
Go.
So remember I did a lot of work with small companies, right? There was this little company that does advertising. Small little company. It was started by one guy. I think their total number of employees was up to 12.
Okay.
So 12 people. Okay. And they were doing work for a chance to do work for Bank of America.
Okay.
Okay. And they were doing advertising work for Bank of America. And Bank of America, all their vendors have to go through this compliance thing with one of these companies. I'm going to mention the name that basically has a 200 question SIG that they have to go through.
Yep.
All right. So they hire me on, and I'm literally talking to the owner. He goes, Joe, I have no idea what these questions mean. Let alone what I'm supposed to do. All right. So my job, basically, translate. And all right, this is what it means. What are you doing? Oh, this is what we're doing. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, good. And that was pretty good. I mean, but the thing was, and you'll see with a lot of new companies, right? They didn't have an office.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't have a network.
Yeah.
They only used cloud-based stuff.
Yep.
Even other companies that I'm working for that are like 300 people.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big company. They're developing their own software.
Yeah.
They have a little office network, but I was even like I said, I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, back to these guys. So these people would come in and the auditor was sitting there and they go, well, what about the network? I said, they don't have a network. Because what do you mean they don't have a network? They don't have a network.
They're all remote.
They all work remotely, but they have a server somewhere. Nope. They don't. They're advertising. They work in Adobe Cloud, Google Cloud.
Yeah.
That's it. It's what they do. Really? Yeah. I mean, it was like, and I understand for them because they're working all these, it was kind of foreign to them. So like they have to catch up to be able to understand all these because they don't understand the technologies either.
That's
the auditing firms don't understand technologies either.
See that this is the thing that scares me about PCI DSS and some of these other ones. It's protecting tomorrow using yesterday's ideas.
Yeah.
But it's the same. I mean, there's not really a fast way to do it. Legislation and compliance is only as fast as we can, codify it, put it out for review, put it into a framework, publish it, send it out to people. Now you've got at least 18 months.
Yeah.
12 if you're really fast. And in 12 months, our industry has changed twice.
Exactly. Yep.
So, all right.
So, but I have to say, some of these companies I see, like one I'm working with, they do everything out of AWS and Google, and they're using Google as their identity provider. Some of that stuff makes it easier. Like you talk about assets, I can get a list of assets from AWS. I got the list right there.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things that AWS and some of those can help with.
Makes it easier.
There are certain things that you got to do the security right on the shared security model.
Yeah.
That's the standard wording. But you do, there are some advantages.
I think it lowers the barrier to entry.
Yep.
We don't have small companies that are trying to okay, final thought for me, and I'll shut up, then we'll end it. But like you go to a local doctor's office, right? They've got 1 or 2 terminals, 2 computers. They're doing their own stuff. You're like, oh man, I hope you're doing the right thing at some point.
Or you go to the one I go to, which is Contact with Wellstar here.
And they've got global network.
Yeah.
They've got good ones. So, all right. Thanks, Joe.
Well, thank you, Raph. It was very nice. Hi, buddy.
47 minutes almost blew by. So there you go. How fast was that?
It seemed like I have no idea. This was really fast.
Really all these episodes go like this. We come up with a topic and we just chat. Like, oh, what are we going to talk about for that much time? And a couple minutes later, like, wait, it's all gone. Tom's gone. So, all right, folks, that's Joe hanging out here. Great guy. Thanks for joining me, Joe. It's been awesome. Thanks for listening, you guys. I will maybe we'll do something like this again. I don't know if you're local, come hang out in my studio. We'll drink coffee. At least I'm not telling anybody else it's not coffee. And talk about cyber. Maybe we'll do like fireside chat or something. Anyway, thanks for listening. 589 done. Catch us on. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you can more of these videos. Obviously, the podcast RSS page. I'll tag Joe on the LinkedIn post so you guys can check out his profile. And Joe's had a hell of a career. Fun guy to work for.
Thanks, man.
So I appreciate that. Lots of learning lessons. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Well, not enough